Even in this day and age, when everyone has access to deep dive analytics that even front offices didn't have a decade ago, precisely accessing defensive impact remains an unexplored territory. Basketball Reference addresses some of the drawbacks of defensive catch-all numbers in its explainer for box plus minus. Quote unquote, a basketball box score based metric that estimates a basketball player's contribution to the team when that player is on the court. This isn't a perfect exercise, of course. Each number has its flaws, and the defensive rating is heavily influenced by who the player is playing with. But in conjunction with video and a couple of other numbers, these instructions point us at the very least in the right direction. You'll discover the bottom 5 defenders in the NBA below. First up, Tristan Thompson. Tristan Thompson was known for years as a great defender who could dominate the boards, block a few shots, and generally be in the correct areas on the defensive end of the court. Contrary to popular belief, Thompson's teams have surrendered more points per 100 possessions when he's been on the field in 8 of his 11 seasons, and it appears that the bottom has fallen out of that number in 2021. When Thompson is on the court, the Sacramento Kings allow 120.5 points per 100 possessions, a third quarter mark, compared to 110.1 when he's not. While other players contribute to that total, Thompson as a center is essentially the anchor of the units that he's in, and he's not putting up much of a fight on the inside. When Thompson defends, opponents shoot 55.4% from the field compared to 47.9% projected field goal percentage. Next up, Jalen Green. During their first NBA seasons, very few players can adjust to the speed and size of the game, let alone the complexities of defensive strategies. Evan Mobley is an exception to the norm that most rookies aren't particularly adept on defense, so Jalen Green being on this list after nearly a fourth of his rookie season shouldn't raise many, if any, red flags. But he's arrived, and it's easy to see why when you look at his individual numbers. When Green is not on the court, the Houston Rockets allow 102.3 points per 100 possessions, second to only the Golden State Warriors' 104.4. Houston's defensive rating skyrockets to 114.2 when he's on the field. Of course, that isn't a fair comparison. The majority of Green's possessions are against starters. Non-Green lineups are frequently used against reserve. However, such a large change is noteworthy. The rookie's rank is also influenced by a lack of basic defensive numbers. Only 7 players with at least 200 minutes this season have a defensive rebounding percentage of less than 10%, a steal percentage of less than 1, and a block percentage of less than 1. Green is, of course, present. Next up, Ziaire Williams. However, the "don't look, he's a rookie" disclaimers apply to Ziaire Williams, the Memphis Grizzlies' first-year reserve wing, who is averaging 2.5 defensive rebounds, 0.9 steals, and 0.6 blocks per 75 possessions. With the possible exception of the defensive rebounds, none of those figures would be significant on their own. Together, they present a picture of someone who is doing very little to move the needle on defense. Low box score marks aren't always indicative of poor defense. Remember what we talked about in the intro? Defensive catch-alls are a good starting point. Klay Thompson is an example of a perimeter defender whose ability was not reflected in blocks, thefts, or rebounds. But for Williams, at least for the time being, there is no reputation to compensate for the poor numbers. Memphis, which is dead last in defense by a long margin, is noticeably worse when Williams is on the court. When he's defending, opponents outperform their predicted field goal percentage. Next up, DJ Augustin. On the defensive end, there's a lot going against DJ. For starters, he's on a horrible defensive team. Rudy Gobert has made poor defenders look good statistically for years because he takes so many points off the board. DJ will not receive such assistance from the Houston Rockets. It's difficult to blame him for other issues as well. Everyone slows down as they become older, and DJ's 34. Standing 5'11" is also a disadvantage. In some matches, even the most scrappy under 6-foot players just cannot compensate for their lack of size. Players of average or near average NBA height can easily shoot over the top of DJ on the occasions when he's able to maintain his matchup in front of them. All of this adds up to horrible defensive metrics, with Houston allowing 11.3 more points per 100 possessions while DJ's on the court, and opponents shooting an astounding 13.4 points better from the field when he's on the floor. Lastly is Terrence Ross. Terrence Ross used to have some decent 3-and-D seasons. In fact, his teams allowed fewer points per 100 possessions in 5 of his previous 7 seasons. He also has above average defensive box plus minus numbers in 2016 through 2017 and 2017 through 2018. Everything has gone off the rails. Steal rate, block rate, defensive rebounding rate, defensive catch-alls, and defensive rating swing are all factors to consider. It's down for whatever you can think of, and large down. There are several probable explanations. The first absolves Ross of some responsibility. As previously stated, defensive catch-alls might contradict reputation. And when you watch Ross, you can see the wing with good size and athleticism who can trouble opponents. Bad teammates could also be a factor. The Orlando Magic have the league's worst bench, and 4 bad defenders bringing down 1 good player is a lot more likely of a scenario than 1 good defender salvaging a unit that ranks bottom in the league at minus 8.3 points per 100 possessions. But it's probably not fair to fall back on that explanation. Ross should take some responsibility for his actions. Prolonged stretches of indifferent defense aren't surprising from a 30-year-old heat check off the bench gunner on a tanking team, and that is exactly what Orlando receives from Ross. If the Magic trade him to a playoff club or contender this season, we might see him put in some more effort. Ross, on the other hand, appears to be checked out right now. Well guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to smash that like button, subscribe to Top NBA, and hit that notification bell so that you never miss a video. See you all next time.